Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Business is More Exciting Than Any Game. I'm your host for today's episode, Attorney Dan Smith of the law firm DPS Legal Counsel. Today I'm going to be talking to business owners who have a website. In other words, I'm going to be talking to just about 100% of all business owners. Because if you're in business today, and you don't have a website, what are you doing? Everyone has a website and needs a website. And so the question that I'm going to be addressing today is this: what is a privacy policy, and do you need one for your website, for your business? All right, let's start with what is a privacy policy. A privacy policy is a legal agreement that you post on your website that essentially describes what types of personally identifiable or personal data information you acquire or obtain from visitors or users of your website. What you do with it, that personally identifiable personal data type of information, how you safeguard it, and how you share it. Now, what's the difference between a privacy policy and what you've probably heard called terms of use or terms and conditions on a website? You'll typically see both terms of use or terms and conditions and a privacy policy. So what is the difference between a privacy policy and terms of use or terms and conditions? Well, the difference is this. The privacy policy is about what information you're collecting from your users, what you're doing with it, how you're safeguarding it, how you're sharing it. A terms of use or terms and conditions is a legal agreement that you post on your website that basically puts the terms and conditions that users have to agree to in order to use your website. So it's an agreement really that terms of use, terms and conditions it's a legal agreement that sets the terms that you're imposing for a user to use your website. A privacy policy is you've got a user and they're providing you with personally identifiable information. Why are you getting it? What are you going to do with it? How are you going to share it? How are you going to safeguard it? So that's the difference between the two. So the question arises, do you need a privacy policy? And if you do, why? The answer in simple terms is if you have a website and doing business in anywhere in the country, you really should have a privacy policy. Here's the reason. There are actually several reasons. One is if there are privacy laws that apply to lots and lots of companies, and lots of businesses, and lots of websites. One is what's called the GDPR, which stands for the General Data Protection Regulation, which was instituted in the European Union last year. So it doesn't apply to everybody, but if you're targeting marketing to Europe, to the European Union, then you probably need to look into getting compliant with the GDPR by having a properly EU compliant, GDPR compliant privacy policy. But even if that's not the case, if you are just doing business in the United States and you have nothing whatsoever to do, you're not getting any information from anybody, any consumers in Europe, if you are getting potentially personally identifiable information from users who are located in California, there is a state law in California called the California Online Privacy Protection Act. And it basically is a consumer protection act that protects the consumers and residents of California. So if someone sitting in their office or in their home in California accesses your website and provides you their email address or some other personally identifiable information, and you've collected that information, even though you may not be, you may have no location and no employees, you may make no sales in California. You have acquired personally identifiable information from a consumer or from a person who's a resident or is residing in California, you need to comply with the California Online Privacy Protection Act. And so there are specific requirements that have to be put into a privacy policy to be compliant with that statute. And so really, if you're out there on the internet, in order to protect yourself because of the possibility of having some a connection with the EU or some connection with California, you really should be looking into having a privacy policy. There are a couple of other reasons. If you collect information from children on your website who are under the age of 13, there's a federal statute called the Children Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPA, that requires you to get parental consent before you obtain that personal information from children under the age of 13. So it's a good idea to make clear in your privacy policy that if you are, for example, a plumbing company or some other company, and your services and goods and services are not being marketed and not being sold to children, to put in your privacy policy that you are not seeking to collect personal information from children, and anyone who puts their information on, like for example, a contact form on your website has to say that they are over the age of 13. That's just another reason. A fourth reason, we've got the EU statute, we've got the California statute, we've got the federal statute dealing with children protection of their privacy. There's also if you have third-party apps or software that is integrated into your website, such as Google Analytics, there are probably requirements that you are subject to based on just using those third-party apps or software, such as Google Analytics, Google AdSense, things of that sort, that require you to protect the privacy of information that you acquire on your website. And lastly, even if you can come to a conclusion that none of this applies to you, okay, you probably should still have a privacy policy, just because it provides anyone who visits your website with some peace of mind that you take their privacy and their information seriously. It makes you look more trustworthy, it makes you look more businesslike. It's just a good idea. So that's what a privacy policy is. That's why if you are in business and you have a website, you should have a privacy policy. How do you get one? Well, you can. There are numerous online privacy policy generators that you can Google and find online. There are companies and law firms and businesses who sell privacy policies. You could always hire an attorney to prepare one for you if you would like. But in any event, you should, if you are doing business and you have a website, you should look into getting a privacy policy. Okay, that's it for today's episode of Business is More Exciting Than Any Game. I hope this helps, and we'll see you next time.